This is what the aftermath of FML looks like.
Where's the easy button?
Today's episode of In the Cave with Valley Rally Enduro is brought to you by Beta Canada, our number one choice when it comes to riding the best enduro bikes on the market today. Go to betacanada.net or your local Beta dealer to check out the latest 2022 models. Ride, race, live, Beta. It's all good in the woods. This episode is also brought to you by Sunny Hill Resort, located on the shores of beautiful Bark Lake in Barry's Bay, Ontario. Family-oriented and moto-friendly, Sunny Hill is Ontario's number one vacation destination and boasts a full range of great amenities such as fully equipped waterfront cottages, full-service campsites, and year-round ride-in, ride-out access for dirt bikes, motorcycles, and snowmobiles. Go to sunnyhillresort.com for full pricing and availability. This episode is also brought to you by Langs Off-Road. If you are at all into enduro or trials riding here in Ontario, then you are no doubt familiar with Langs Off-Road. They are one of, if not the only, dedicated enduro and trial shop in the province, and they know their stuff. If you are in the Southern Ontario region and are an enduro or trials enthusiast like us, then you would be doing yourself a disservice by not checking out Langs Off-Road for your moto needs. So, Stephanie Yankovich and Laura Penwell, welcome to the cave.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, for those folks who don't know who you guys are, Stephanie is a supported rider with Gas, and Laura Penwell is a Beta brand ambassador. And you may be the only female brand ambassador in Ontario. Is that correct?
I think I might be. There's definitely some racers.
Yes.
Yes. But yes, as far as the actual ambassador in Ontario, I believe I am the only female.
Congratulations.
Man, you're
yes.
the boss.
You are the boss.
There's definitely more in Canada, which are awesome ladies. Mm-hmm. And but yes, Ontario representing here tonight.
Right on. Well, we're here to talk about the rise of women in the sport of enduro. I mean, it's a really hot market for the bike industry right now. Female riders, they're growing exponentially every year. It's becoming a really big thing. And as far as we're concerned, it's awesome to have, it's all one big happy family now, where it's not just a bunch of stinky dudes out there riding bikes.
No, our events are turning into a whole family event, and it's great. Yeah.
There's still a lot of stinky dudes.
For sure.
We're two right
but it's
here.
Getting better.
100%. 100%. There's no denying that.
Yeah, there's one stinky dude in the audience over here.
Yeah, it's definitely not an old boys club anymore.
No, not at all.
It's evolving for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot more women getting involved, and I hope it grows and grows.
Mm-hmm, me too.
And I think it will. It's from my perspective personally, I think it's really refreshing to see that come into play. It's just a whole new different angle, because marketing to the women's segment is a little bit different than marketing to the traditional segment, which is a bunch of guys. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what attracts women to riding is probably a little bit different than what attracts men to riding. And that's maybe we should start there. What got you guys into riding in the first place?
A man.
Actually, ditto on that.
Yeah. I'll show you. Yeah.
My partner, Ian Peters, got me into riding, and I don't think he was prepared for the level of enthusiasm that I eventually acquired. So, I fell in love with it, and we can talk a little bit more about this later maybe, but it makes a big difference when you have someone who is in the know and can help introduce you to the sport. For women that are trying to do this solo, it's really challenging financially, just knowing what you don't know, and, being able to get the support, getting to the trails, knowing where to ride, who to ride with. So it was great to have someone introduce me to the sport, and I haven't looked back.
How old were you when you started?
Oh my God, I was old. I still. I didn't start riding until I was in my early 40s, so I'm 50 now, and I met Ian probably 9 or 10 years ago, and that's when he introduced me. And so for the first season or so, I rode fairly infrequently. We had other stuff we enjoyed doing, but since then we've gotten rid of all of our other hobbies. We used to be kayak instructors, and we used to do all sorts of fun outdoor stuff, and now it's all dedicated to dirt biking.
Very similar story, kind of. For sure, Lee and I, he was really interested in dirt biking as a kid. So we've been together a few years, and he said, he wants to get back into dirt biking. And I'm like, what? Okay. So he was very enthusiastic about it, and he ended up bringing home a bike one day. It was a 95 Kawasaki. And he
Lee and Kawasaki.
got into the Kawasaki again, and then one day he's like, you gotta try this. So much fun. And I was early 30s. Yeah, I didn't start as, obviously wasn't young. So yeah, he got me on it, and I was a little nervous. It was full-size bike and hard to touch the ground, and a little intimidating. And yeah, so he got me on the bike, and I honestly, I didn't love it. I was scared, and it wasn't like a spark hit me and I was instantly hooked or anything. So what happened after that is I was like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but maybe not for me. And then a few months later, unbeknownst to me, he actually had stored away. He bought a little 95 TW Yamaha 200.
Great bike.
Perfect bike and to learn on. So I actually got on that one day. We ended up going for a ride, and I got my M1 a week later. I was like, I'm hooked. So yeah. So definitely Lee got me into it, and sort of similar story as Stephanie with having an amazing support person there.
Yeah, although we've seen Lee as a supports person, and sometimes it's not as supportive as you would think.
Let me say, there have been some crying on the trail. Definitely.
I bet.
I don't know why you're looking at me when you say that. So I should divulge that Laura came on vacation with us, and we went down to North Carolina to Brushy Mountain. And before that, we were in Tennessee at Windrock. And so we invited Laura because she's awesome.
Oh,
and I love riding with Laura.
We love riding together.
And we knew Lee was going to be doing a West Virginia ride with the guys. So we invited Laura to come with us. And then unbeknownst to us, he canceled his ride and then reminded me that, of the invite that I'd sent him, which I hadn't actually invited him on vacation with us. And so he joined us. But I remember that first day, we found ourselves on some single track that hadn't been used in a long time, and it was just a struggle fest. It was, and this was many, many years ago, so not riding at the level that either of us are riding
still
at now. And that's
learning.
Still, exactly.
Yeah.
And we saw Lee for 5 minutes, I think, at the beginning of the trail, and then didn't see him again.
I think he was possibly waiting for us at the massive uphill in the middle of the forest. And we both get up to there, and we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? So, but riding with the guys is definitely something that's how we started. It's basically just they got us into it and sort of taught us whatever they knew or didn't know, basically.
Right. And you don't, I didn't ride with any women at first. It was just with Ian and a friend of ours, Darren Serkonik, who we adopted, our third wheel. I hadn't ridden with any ladies, and I think it was taking the Rally Connex spring training for the first time that I actually got to meet Laura and some other women. And that was brutal. I remember looking back on that and just the lack of ability. It's
only brutal because there's so much information in one day, right? Especially when you're a new rider and you're still trying to wrap your head around the bike itself. And then all of a sudden you're introduced to all these different drills that you're doing throughout the day. And by the end of the day, Lee said, hey, take Stephanie on the single track route. And she's already tired and exhausted. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And so we did it and we made it through. It was, a little tricky terrain and stuff. But the spring training, we've been doing that with Rally Connex for, I can't even remember how many years, but we try and bring it back every year if we can. Obviously, due to COVID, there's some limitations, but that's where Stephanie and I met. And
well, we should maybe mention that. So Lee's your partner, and you're part of the Rally Connex team.
Yes.
That puts on these lady-specific spring training events.
Absolutely. Yep. Lee had actually acquired Rally Connex. We actually owe, speaking of learning how to ride, Lee and I do owe the previous owners of Rally Connex a lot for teaching us a lot of stuff. So I have to say, for several years, we spent a lot of time with those guys, and they kind of got us out and taught us the ropes. And after a few years, Lee decided that was what he wanted to do, and Kevin Burnett was ready to pass the company on. So Lee acquired the company, and basically, in a nutshell, Rally Connex is a GPS-guided trail ride, adventure ride, dirt bike event company, and there's also the training. So spring training, we didn't have ladies right away. We've had just co-ed for several years, and then obviously with the increased ridership with ladies and the demand, we thought we would bring just a ladies only, and so lady instructors, and Stephanie decided to help us out with that. That was something she was interested in. So yeah, it's evolving still.
Is it a good turnout every year? The
Yeah,
ladies?
it's not bad. It's not bad. Like I couldn't tell you numbers. I'm trying to remember because I think we didn't do it last year, but we did kind of pivot a bit with the Rally Connex, and we did a lot of private training the last couple of years too, just because numbers and stuff. But yeah, no, and we always have a good turnout of ladies, and everyone always has an amazing time at the end of the day.
Yep. Going back to riding with guys, though, if that's all you've ever done, you don't realize how different the experience is when you ride with women. And I think it's important to do both. I know I love riding with guys. You get pushed to try stuff that you might not tackle otherwise. And with ladies too. I mean, Laura is a great rider. I love watching her ride. She rides smooth as silk. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
But it's super, you don't know how, just the camaraderie. And when we've done ladies rides over this past season, for example, I know Korma did their first ladies ride. It's just amazing to watch the support that we give each other, and just you're very relaxed, and it's just a different atmosphere than it is going out with guys or group rides. So
yes, it's a lot lower stress level, I think, for the ladies. And the Korma ride, there was a pretty large turnout for that, which is amazing. And we did have some guy helpers, which was awesome. Because don't get me wrong, we know a good amount about dirt bikes, but I mean, not to the level of our amazing guys with the technical
just because
knowledge.
they're old and they've been around a really long time, Laura.
You got that on.
Especially with a diverse amount of different types of women and rider levels.
But I think you have a point. Like, give it some time, and I think you're going to see that level of female rider come down the pike, like the female version of Chris Burch or Paul Bolton or whoever come down the line. Someone who's done well in racing and is dominated in their class, and they're able to now give back in the form of, putting on clinics and stuff like that. Like, I can totally see that happening in the future for sure.
Yep. Well, there's women doing that now. I mean, a lot of my inspiration, and I think a lot of the instigation for this movement, like the grassroots movement with women, is coming from and people like Crystal Loves Moto and Meg's Brap and their online presence, and these women are they do the work, and they are hardcore, and their passion is evident in what they do. And whether you race or you don't race, or you just trail ride, or you're just learning, I think there's the being able to see influences like that. It's great to follow. I admire Laia Sands and some of these other women that are pro racers and riders, but to have people that are more reflective of the average woman, and I'm very much the average woman, I think, it's awesome. It makes you realize that you can do it too, and
Well, that's I would echo that sentiment even on our side of the fence. It's that's why riders like Paul Bolton, he's privateer, and he's still a privateer, and he's kind of a self-funded dude. I mean, he has his sponsors, but he's nowhere as hooked up as some of the other guys are.
Yeah, he still has to work.
He still has to work, and he's amazing. Like when you guys had him out to do some Rally Connex events, like, he was super awesome,
like top level.
Yeah,
Definitely.
really good dude. Super down to earth and not afraid to get his hands dirty. Not that some of the other guys aren't either, but like there was a issue with my spring was really stiff, like it wasn't set up quite right, and he's like, "Oh, we can totally fix that," and he just pulled it out of the bike like right there. I didn't ask him; he just did it.
Yeah,
and
they're so used to doing that.
Yeah,
they know they have to modify their bikes for every condition that they're in, right?
And it was super cool. So I can totally relate to that. That's having that everyday person who's at that level.
And even as a world enduro champion and stuff, because he's down to earth, you as a participant in those courses, whether it's that or even, I know Shelby Turner was here a couple of years ago for the Cord, and she did a workshop. You, as a woman, I sometimes feel intimidated, and you think you have to be at a certain level to tackle these things. And I know going into a lot of these training workshops, or even some of the events that I ride, whether they be a trail ride or a race, it's a lot of the time it's over my head. But if you don't challenge yourself, it's hard to improve. And there's nothing wrong with, going out there and trail riding and getting time on the bike, but if you have any drive to race or to be more competitive or just to challenge
Improve.
yourself,
Yeah.
and improve, you need to do those things that are a little bit beyond your comfort level. So to have pros who know what they're talking about, but relate to you as a human being, and it means you start out feeling confident, and they build on that confidence as well. And just because you're a pro racer doesn't necessarily make you a great instructor. And so Chris Burch is a phenomenal instructor. And so that's kind of where I started too with Rally Connex, is doing the Chris Birch workshops a couple of times. And I would do them again, and I would do level 1
Several
again, I would do
times,
level
right?
2 again, because you never stop learning. And
Paul was he was great, but I know what you mean. Like the difference between I think Paul and Chris has obviously spent a lot more time thinking about how to explain X,
How
Y,
to be a
and Z.
teacher, basically.
Yeah, like he's really distilled it down to a process and
Yeah,
a system.
it's easy to understand and
Yeah.
digest, and that's a point I want to kind of bring up too. Is, I mean, let's say as a new woman rider, or as a new rider, anyone, doesn't have to be a woman. Like for me, when I was first riding, I didn't have any coaching. I never took any classes, and so it's just we never had coaching, and we would just go out and ride. And it was several years where it's like I'm making the same mistakes. I don't know the proper technique. I don't know where my body position, where my weight's supposed to be, where I'm supposed to sit on the seat, where I'm supposed to stand. And I just learned the hard way. So, I mean, I had so many bruises and bumps and tip overs and
That's universal though.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
I was the same
absolutely.
way.
it's almost like you just have
Yeah.
when we're talking about Chris Birch and all that, as soon as we started actually taking classes and training with him, that I'm saying, if you're a new rider, get out and take a class right away, whether it's trail tours or, smart centers up in, so Chris Birch or anybody, just take a class and just create the habits, the good habits right off the bat, as opposed to learning the wrong habits and trying to eventually get yourself out of them. I find if you can mitigate that right at the beginning and start off with the right techniques, then you're setting yourself up to improve and improve.
Yeah,
And then it's
great idea.
practice.
Yep. And I'm not trying to be sexist here, guys, but I think women, and I've heard from female and male instructors, that we take instruction really well because we are open.
100%.
I have an ego, and I need to check it, or usually the bike checks it for me. But I like to listen and I like to learn, and I want to absorb as much as possible. And so, I think women will listen and then they'll execute. And so you can learn and gain skill exponentially and quickly, and then apply that when you practice and you do your trail riding or your other activities. It makes a big difference for sure.
I agree.
I would agree too.
Yeah.
It's almost like the
There's
guys.
some dudes out there where you're just like, yeah, you got to do this. Bah.
Nah,
It's like,
I've been doing this for
Yeah,
years.
squirrel.
Yeah. Well, we did a little training exercise earlier this year, just outside of Sunny Hill, and we had 2 guys and 2 girls, and the ones that excelled by far, and took everything that we sort of taught them and showed them to the absolute top level. It was the 2 girls. They listened. They very little complaints, and at the end of the week, it was amazing the difference that they had.
Yeah, they were riding really well.
Really well.
Really well. And we had a really shit last day. Like the weather was bad, and it was raining, and the conditions were garbage. And they were troopers, man.
Yeah.
They were like, we
That's
stopped,
awesome.
and they're like, "What? We're done?
Yeah.
Like, let's keep going." And the dudes are like, already like wheeling their bikes into the trailer.
Yeah.
That's
And it's
awesome.
nice to have, so I'm really lucky that Ian has coached me from day one, but just like you don't really want your dad teaching you to drive or your boyfriend teaching you to drive, there comes a point where, you want to be able to, maintain your positive, happy relationship. So it's great to go and get training from other people. And the other thing too is, and I've been an instructor in other sports, that, being able to identify, the detect and correct and for each individual and what they need to motivate them and help them learn is really important. So, the more variety we can get with instruction, the better. But I definitely feel that we're good at listening, and we like to learn how to, to do it right the first time, I think. So,
Definitely.
yeah. So
sure.
I really benefited from the Rally Connex Ladies Spring Training as well. So
It was a
hopefully
good-
that'll happen this year. And
I'm hoping, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, you have to start somewhere. And I mean, just if it's a ladies thing you want to start off, great. If it's a co-ed thing, it doesn't really matter. Just as long as you find a good teacher, good instructor, and just pay attention.
I wish
and practice.
I wish I would have found Rally Connex Events a lot sooner.
Oh yes.
I was riding, like a lot of folks, I learned to ride a dirt bike from my ridiculously irresponsible cousins. Someone else's dirt bike and flip flops and board shorts and no helmets, that sort of thing.
Yep.
In the 80s, and took a break because I couldn't afford my own bike, and then got back into it when I was older, when I could afford my own bike, and then I just started riding with friends who had big adventure bikes, and we didn't know what we were doing. We're just riding off road, and learn by process, and like you say, bumps and bruises and broken bike parts.
Yep. You learn the hard way, basically.
As I got more and more into it, my bikes got smaller because I'm like, okay, well, 990s are fun, but they hurt a lot more when you go down and they're heavy.
Yep.
So anyways, started riding with Darren, and Darren was like, hey man, like, try not to follow me so close because I've been riding for years and you haven't. So everybody gets hurt when they try and do that. So maybe don't do that.
Right.
And I would wipe out and all that stuff. And then I took one of your courses, and Darren's like, who's this guy? Who is this guy?
Night and day, right?
Yeah, because now your body position is right. You kind of know what you're doing a little bit, and that makes all the difference.
You're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, you're not sitting down when you're not supposed to. You're not standing up when you're not supposed to. That sort of thing. Like you're weighting the bike properly. It's really simple stuff, but it makes a really big difference.
Oh, it's huge.
And it's not always intuitive. That's the thing, right? You sometimes, like when you're first learning, you're scared, and instinctively you want to pull the clutch in, you want to slow down when you get to tough stuff. And sometimes that little extra momentum will help you through an obstacle. And how you weight the bike isn't always intuitive as well.
Well, even how you set it up, right? Like
Yep.
one of the funniest things was after doing the course and seeing how Chris, he goes through that, right? He shows you how to set your bike up properly, your levers and everything.
Yep.
And I would go back to my adventure bike buddies, and they have their stuff like it's all over the map. Like it's like, how do you even reach that? The levers are so far forward, you got to stand up just to pull on the clutch. And it's like, no, I like it that way, man. Don't touch it. Like, no, this is how you should do it. That's so weird. That's stupid. Why would you do it that way? But as you go through and as you get used to it, it makes it so much easier.
Well, and there's a rhyme to their reason.
For sure.
There's a reason why they're adjusting the
Exactly.
bike to be like that, right?
I think it's important too, though, that you get this instruction, you get the suggestions, and then you have to try it out because it like there's a range, right, that they tell you about. So with your hand guards and your levers, maybe it's flat, it's perpendicular, but maybe that doesn't work 100% for you or your body shape or your size.
Or your bike size.
And this is, I think, where it's a little bit more challenging for women sometimes too.
No,
Because
they don't have big hands, right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Typically.
And it's a struggle, and and the bike height, and so I find there's a lot of people that are you're not happy with your bike, you don't like it, but they don't necessarily know that you can do all of these adjustments before you send it out to get it looked at. Adjust your sag, adjust your levers properly, all that stuff. And usually you have information about that in your manual. YouTube is a great resource for information. And once you set it up for yourself, and then it's so much better. And you're able to then work on those techniques a lot easier as well.
Yep.
But you don't, unless you have someone guiding you through that process, you don't know those things necessarily.
Yeah. It's almost like a learning process. It's almost like you eventually get it, but it's how long is your journey to eventually getting it. And I mean, dirt biking is going to be a lifelong journey. We're never going to hit a plateau. We're always going to learn something. But yeah, the shorter you make that distance from okay, I'm a beginner to okay, I'm starting to get this. I think the more you're, like I said, setting yourself up for
You're just going to be
many
enjoying
years.
it for longer.
You're going to enjoy it and not
Yeah.
hurt yourself as much.
And play with stuff, find a hill and adjust some settings, or find a section of trail and adjust your suspension or the stuff you can't, your compression and rebound. Ride the trail, go back, change those settings, ride it again.
Yep.
And it took me a long time to even be able to answer questions about how my bike was performing, because I didn't have that subtlety or nuance. And I, did you like this tire better than that tire? It's like, I don't know.
You weren't in tune with your bike at that point.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I was more busy, concerned with staying alive and not dying, that I wasn't able to focus then on that. And so once you have some basic skill, so you're now reacting and you're not having to think about stuff, it's intuitive or instinctive, then you can start to look at that next subtle level and start to look at, okay, maybe I do, my front end is washing out, or, I'm not waiting my outside, like whatever those things are, you're able to feel them because it's not just, you're not riding to survive anymore. And you've acquired the sensitivity to be able to feel that stuff through your bike. But like you said, and this is what I love so much about dirt biking is that, there's no ceiling for anybody. And, I wish I'd started when I was 3 years old.
Me too.
And
Me too.
it'd be so freaking awesome.
All of us.
Oh yeah.
But, it's so, they talk about time on the bike, and I think that's important, but it's this whole concept of practice makes perfect, I don't think is true. I think having intention to what you're doing and what you're practicing is important, and perfect practice is important, because you mentioned earlier, Laura, that you can practice the wrong stuff and ingrain those habits.
Yeah, if
and
you're
it's
practicing
so
the
much,
wrong thing, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so if you can start with some instruction and understand the basics, and even when I struggle, going back to those basics, just working on slow, tight, full bar lock turns, or even balancing drills. Like it's not like there are people that are gifted at dirt biking, but a lot of it is time and how often you can get out and ride and how often you practice. And I'm even like Ian and I, we ride a lot, but there are times where I'm just trail riding, and now I've gotten to the point where I want to get better and I want to get faster and I want to be able to tackle harder stuff, and and it's always, you have to push yourself to do drills, and they're boring sometimes and repetitive, but I think the outcome ultimately is, there's a goal there. Yeah. So, work on those, like go slow to go fast, work on balance and those slow and clutch control, and then you'll be able to tackle, you'll just find yourself going faster or looking further down the trail, which allows you to go faster on the bike as well. So
Yeah, we've talked about that before, just sessioning small sections and just taking the time to do that. Normally on a ride or a race, you're racing through to the end and you miss all that. But if you just pick a section and just ride that for 2 hours, you learn so much.
Yeah, it's like we were saying earlier when Mia and her boyfriend came up and did that weekend tour. They just came up with their bikes. They stayed here for the weekend, and we rode all the OVR tracks, but we picked and chose what we wanted to do. And that's exactly what we ended up doing, is we ended up sessioning the stuff that they really wanted to either work at or really enjoyed. And, stuff that they weren't really into, we skipped that. We weren't on the event, so there wasn't a lot of pressure. It was just a fun ride. And yeah, we like that one difficult section, we sessioned it 5 or 6 times in a row until we all cleaned it properly. And, we helped each other get up and, gave some pointers like, hey, maybe lean back a little bit more on your bike or give it a little more gas, get the momentum going, that sort of thing.
Yep. And I think that's super helpful. And so, and I have to say that I love you guys, and what you have here at Sunny Hill is awesome. And I'm also looking at you, John, when I say that.
We've come a long way.
We have come a long way.
Yeah.
Working hard here.
So if there are people out there listening that haven't been to Sunny Hill, you need to come, whether it's to OVR or just come up any other time of the year and ride. There's so few places where you can stay in great accommodation that's affordable, with a lake and all, the cool dudes in the area, and ride your bike from your cottage out into some of the gnarliest trails around, and also some of the most scenic lookouts. Like I know other folks have talked about this on the podcast, but it really is a pretty magical place, and you guys are doing great stuff here. So I know that. Ian, we like supporting you and, like being here. So
thanks, Ian.
Just bring beer, and that's
I know they're cheap and easy. Just
a box of beer, it's good.
yeah.
So we talked a little bit how you guys got into the sport, but I'm curious, what kind of challenges would you say are out there for female riders getting into enduro or off-road riding in general? Like what are some of the big hurdles from your perspective?
Well, I would start with just the sheer fact that women are not the same size and shape as men, and most dirt bikes are sort of geared towards, a full-sized 180-pound male at 5'9" to 6'2" or whatever. I don't think
Jose Garcia is 180 pounds.
I mean, this is universal.
Not your average rider.
Yeah,
There's obviously going to be, a variety of everybody. But yeah, for women, I mean, they're shorter in general, the different shapes, our hips and everything. So I think the biggest hurdle is obviously, I hear it everywhere, is from the ladies. It's like the bike's too tall. The bike's too tall. And it's like, what bike I find myself when I'm tall, I'm 5'9", and I'm average weight and everything. So for me, it's like not really too much of an issue. When I first started learning, though, I wanted to be completely flat-footed, and that's why the TW was great. And I find as a woman, obviously the biggest hurdle is finding the right bike, and I've been through 6 or 7 bikes in the 12 or 13 years I've been riding. So don't be afraid to get a bike and say in 6 months, okay, now I'm ready to move on to another bike. Or so definitely, body shape, size. That's be the first thing I would say would be an issue for most ladies.
And it's when you're first starting out, it's hard to know, unless you've got someone guiding you, it's hard to know what you don't know. It's hard to know, what bike do I get? Do I get a 2-stroke? Do I get a 4-stroke? What type of terrain am I going to be riding? You don't necessarily know those things. And that evolves too over time. And so having someone to guide you, going to a school, you mentioned Trail Tours or SMART, where you can see if you actually like it before you end up investing a lot of money. Until this year, I never had a new bike. I was very lucky that I started on a little XR100 in the Somerville forest. Ian was cutting trail and prepping trail for the corduroy and just sent me on my way. And but you were saying earlier, Laura, it was terrifying and exhilarating. And, I stalled it, I fell off, and I was probably going 2 kilometers an hour and I still fell off the bike. And then, that we're talking 4-strokes now. So I rode a Honda CRF 230 for a while, and then, graduated to a WR 250, and the 4-strokes were great. And I didn't know what a 2-stroke was all about until later. But they're great because they're tractors and you can aim at stuff and they get over everything, and they weren't super tall. And they're a good starter bike, or that route is a good way to go.
And they generally don't try to kill you.
No, no. But then I remember we had an old KTM 200 XCW, and I got on that, and it was, it was like getting on a bucking bronco. But once you get over that hurdle, and we did a really cool drill. Ian took me out, and we were actually at some of the Trail Tours property, and it was just a big flat open field space. And he said, you're worried about when this power band is going to kick in. And he said, so just ride hard, go all the way up through the power band through each of your gears, and you'll feel it. Sit down as you do it, make yourself comfortable, and, just go through them all and get on the gas. And that made me, then I started to understand when to anticipate that would kick in. And it built my confidence. And then as soon as when I started riding, I didn't know any better. I was, swimming in mud holes up around, corduroy territory. And I thought that's what dirt biking was. I'm talking like buried up to my helmet in mud holes. We're working on checks at the Corduroy Enduro, and Ian's, we're rushing to get there because we have to set up the check before the riders get there. And we're just, flying, and it's, so, and I rode single track. So for me personally, I hate 2-track. The tighter it is, the better. I feel really uncomfortable, and put me on a gravel road and I suck. It's so scary. I overshoot corners, and it's so, for me, as soon as I got on a 2-stroke after a couple of years, it changed everything for me. And so that learning curve is really steep, but once you get over it, then I was able to start tackling the terrain that I really enjoy, which is the tighter stuff and the harder stuff. But understanding then, engine size and, that kind of thing, and what do I need? It's so dependent on terrain. And so I think there's, the forums on Facebook and Instagram, and being able to reach out to other women, going to training courses where you can have conversations like this,
Educating
they're
yourself,
fantastic,
basically.
right?
Yeah.
Because-
Trying different bikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know that when I do rides with my women's group, that I'm happy to let people try my bike. They're dirt bikes. They're pretty tough. And I know others have lent their bikes out and they've come back trash, but it's great to try stuff. And I would say to the height issue for women, don't worry about that, because 2 things. One, as your skill develops, it isn't as intimidating to have a taller bike, and there's lowering kits and there's ways to adjust the bike.
Modify them. Yep.
Yeah, and you'll be able to ride it, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to be flat-footed once you start to develop that confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
So look at the terrain you're riding. Look at and there's some awesome, like, I'm a big fan of the like the 2-strokes, obviously, and the 150s are amazing because they're super light, and I think they're nimble in the woods, and they, you know, when you start on a 4-stroke, it's heavy, and you get to learn some of those basic skills. But then when you get that lighter bike, it's a game changer. Electric start, I think, is really helpful.
Very good idea.
Had to kick, you know, as well, my
Definitely.
first 2-stroke, but it's, you know, so things like that. I think not to be intimidated by the bike and try as many as you can, because you can make a lot of mods to them that will help you. Yep.
So what are some tips if there's some new riders looking to get into the sport? They're maybe on the verge of pulling the trigger on a new bike, or they're looking for options. What would you say is some go-tos for those folks?
For bikes.
For bikes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we suggest trail tours or one of the places you can rent the bike. Obviously, you can try them and you'd be like, okay, what do I really like? But they typically start you off on like a 4-stroke. And I mean, for me to learn, I think a smaller 4-stroke is a really good starting place. Obviously, it depends on, you know, what's available and your budget and all that kind of thing. But yeah, like definitely like a small 4-stroke, you know, get used to the clutching, get used to all the basics, even if you take a class or take a Rally Connex class or whatever you do. And then from there, you just develop your skills, and then you will know where it's going to lead you. You know, like for me, I did graduate from like the 200, and I had a 250, I had another 250, and then it was all 4-strokes. And then I graduated I wanted the 2-strokes. I wanted it to be lighter, a little more nimble, easier to maneuver. So for me, my journey was 4-strokes, small 4-strokes, and then got into a full-size 2-stroke. And then I'm at the highest level 2-stroke, basically, that they have with beta. So that's my journey. Honestly, too, though, there's people that put their wives or their girlfriends on a big full-size bike right off the bat, and they take to it, you know. But typically for most women, I would say, you know, definitely start small, feet on the ground, get used to everything, just learn the clutch, learn all the techniques and tricks, take the class, and then start your journey that way.
And there's nothing worse than, and we all have bad days where you scare yourself a little bit, and, you know, I continue to have crashes on a regular basis and offs, but you
Have
really,
you seen the man cave?
Yeah, there's
yes.
wall of
We
honor.
also have
Lots of
crashes.
plastic. But it would be awful. The worst thing would be to put someone on a bike that
Your first
isn't
day.
really appropriate for
Right.
them, and they're injured, or they never want a dirt bike again.
Kills their confidence.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you know, and the other thing too is, like, again, having not bought a new bike before this season, you like get used bikes, and the resale value, especially now with COVID, is stupid. So you can resell them really easily, especially the smaller displacement bikes, because there's always people learning. So it's okay to make a mistake, and, you know, or not even a mistake, but learn that, you know, this
Buy
isn't
the
the
wrong
bike for
bike.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
but I will say, if women are asking me, and I had the chance to ride in Portugal back in 2019, and the company, I'm just going to tell you who they are because they're awesome, but Free Ride Spirit, and they do tours in Portugal. We got to ride through Porto, where they hold the XL Agaris.
Oh, wow.
And so actually we were riding on a trail, and we came up to the wall,
Right.
the waterfall wall, and we stopped and we looked at it, and it was really cool to ride there. But I was on a KTM 150 XCW, and it was an amazing bike, and more than enough power for the stuff that I wanted to do. I'm heavier and have been riding a little bit longer, so for me, my last bike was a KTM 200 XCW, and it was like the most fabulous bike in the world, I thought, you know, and they don't make it anymore, sadly, but it was just the perfect amount of engine. It was light. It was awesome. And I thought I'd never be able to replace that. And so the other thing too is it's good advice, you know, when you're first learning to get this information. But there also comes a time where I really struggled. You know, there aren't 200s on the market except the Beta was an option. But my mechanic we're a KTM shop, or KTM, you know, Husky gas shop. So, you know, we wanted to try and be able to stick within that brand if possible, just so we could, you know, share parts and stuff. So I was really struggling. I didn't know, do I go 150 and go down in CCs, or do I go up to 250? And I'd ridden Ian's 250 XCW before. And when you try someone else's bike, it's not set up for you.
Yep.
Right.
You know, I could never find the shifter. The levers were in the wrong place. His clutch was brutally stiff. And so I always would hate the experience. And so when it came time to have an opportunity to get and ride the EC 250 gas, I thought, oh, here we go. This is going to be a struggle. And it was a dream to ride. And so, that taking that next step and where do you go is also a big decision when you want to go up to the next level of bike. But
You were lucky in that, were you not? You got to try one out before you bought it?
I did. I don't even know how it came about. I was very fortunate. I was approached by Gas Canada, and they lent me a bike to try, and I loved it. And so it wasn't a requirement that I purchase it, but I did. And thankfully, they offer me some support, which I really appreciate.
That's
and,
awesome.
And I kind of thought at first, oh, what if I don't like it?
Yeah.
But I fell in love with it, and it's amazing. It handles like a 150. It's super light. It's wonderful, and the power isn't as aggressive. I know it has mapping. I have never switched it off of I think it's on the more aggressive mode when it comes factory, but it's wonderful. And it was at the stage where it's actually helped me improve my skill because it just has a little bit more power when I need it. I'm still learning though, and there's still times where it gets away from me, but it's a wonderful bike. And
Well, I think it's important to, like, once you get your feet kind of on the ground and you kind of know what you're doing a little bit, it's important to get yourself a motorcycle that you can grow into. So, like my first two-stroke was the KTM 200 XCW, great bike, but I outgrew that motorcycle really quickly, but it's only because I'm a bigger guy, and it was, what I was finding was I was bouncing off of rocks, whereas when I was on my old 450 XCW or EXC, I would just kind of cruise over that stuff because there was more weight behind it.
Yeah.
And I found the 200 really light. So I went to the 250 and it was better, but I was still kind of experiencing some of that. And I'm on the 300 now and I'm very happy. 300 beta, to be clear.
Nice.
the other
Plug.
red. I
Joining the
guess.
club. Yes. Well, that's one thing we have in common for sure.
Oh, I'm outnumbered, I realize.
Well, no,
Yeah.
3-1.
hey, your bike's red, so it's
Yeah,
you're kind of
you're in.
You are
It's
surrounded.
this pretty cherry red that is a
Yes.
little different than
It's
the beta.
not the exact same color. You're
No,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but and going back to women when they first come into the scene and challenges, I think too it's not just the bike, it's the gear, the clothing, finding clothing that fits, and it's not always size, it's the shape too. I've been lucky enough to be able to ride with FemPro armor, which is a really cool product, and that's the first fitted armor that I've ever had that's actually worked with my boobs and the other parts of me and has kept me super safe.
That's one thing I wanted to ask was like that. So we've covered the bike topic, but how do you find gear, right? So you always see there's women's gear and there's men's gear, but the women's gear looks really similar to a lot of the guys' gear.
Yeah, except pink. It's always pink.
Except,
Oh, yeah.
except it's pink. Yeah, that's how you
Yeah.
know.
You know there's a pink option.
So
For sure.
the challenge is, most women, generally speaking, are smaller than guys in proportion differently, but I'm not one of them, right? And my weight fluctuates. I've, lost a bunch of weight recently. I put some back on since I've stopped riding this season. But I'm not little. So for me, none of the women's gear, although, maybe in height it worked for me, but in weight and size, it never did. So for a long time, I was wearing men's gear, finding boots that fit my calves was a challenge, finding armor. And I understand that it's a smaller market, and so they spend less money on it.
Yeah.
But, like I used to wear a fox roost guard, and I would get the men's one because the shoulder caps were much bigger, and they actually covered your shoulder. And the women's, they make it smaller. They have like the boob shape, but the shoulder is much smaller than an actual woman's shoulder as well. So it's not providing you the level of protection that you need. Women, whether you're trail riding or whether you're racing hardcore or doing motocross or whatever it is, or hard enduro, like hitting the ground still hurts regardless, or getting a rock or, hitting a tree or whatever it is. So, it's frustrating that there isn't more, especially safety gear for women.
And really,
Yeah.
gear is a very important part of
Sure.
of what we do.
Oh yeah.
I've had my fair share of hard downs, and I get back up. And if I didn't have any, or if I had poor gear, I'd be in a much worse position. I wouldn't be riding my bike back home. There's one time I had to come back and Christine had to pull it off me because I was really hurt. But
Oh.
if I didn't have gear on, I don't know what it would look like, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a delicate balance between how much gear do you wear and then how hot it is outside
Absolutely,
too.
yeah.
It's almost like you need two different sets of gear for depending on the weather. Like I'm trying to find the lightest breathable gear, but yet, protective,
Yeah.
the best protection, and like the lightest helmet, but yet still good. And fortunately, Rally Connex has been supported by Climb, and they have really stepped up in the past few years and have increased their ladies stuff.
Yeah,
and
the
I have
Climb
been.
Women is awesome. Yeah.
It's getting a lot better, and they're offering a lot more options. And so for me, most of my gear that I wear under my gear is men, made for men. But then the actual stuff I wear on the outside, which is a lot of the Climb stuff, is made for women. And the biggest difference I find is just the shape. Obviously, it's made for women's hips. I was wearing the men's gear before, and I would have to go up a size because the men have such like thinner hips than we do. So it was always baggy everywhere else, but it was tight in the hips and stuff. So yeah, definitely very impressed with the XC Light stuff, just because I get overheated like pretty easily. So that's my go-to gear. Boot-wise, they make women's boots. I mean, I have regular, fairly long legs, so I go for the men's stuff. But I find, too, with women's, what they'll tend to do is they'll tend to go a little cheaper on the materials, right? So you've got boots that are maybe one variety of boot from one manufacturer that aren't made at maybe as a level of protection that I would want, So that's something I don't want to compromise, and I don't want to, just because it's a girl's, I'm not going to get it just because it's a girl's, right? So, or a ladies. So yeah, for me, I try and get the lightest gear, whether it's made for a man or a woman, but for the actual fitment, if I can find women's outer gear, then definitely. I do struggle, like you said, with the chest protector. I have a men's version. I look like a bit of a linebacker. I'm tempted
No
to.
one messes with you though.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They don't. But anyway, so for that, yeah, I'm definitely, I look for the women's stuff first. And if I don't think it's going to fit me or maybe be as adequate, then I go back to the men's stuff. But there are ladies out there that, it's hard to fit, like you said. And you kind of have to maybe mix and match your choices.
Yeah. And when you're first starting out, like it's a fortune to buy gear. I don't,
Yeah.
like for the longest time, it would always be, GP Bikes is my local dealership and they're awesome, but I'd look for sale stuff. Royal Distributing usually has a great clearance rack. So, you can get jersey and pants for under $100 as opposed to several $100s for each piece. And I mean, you trash your gear. I don't think I've ever done one ride and not had a hole or a tear somewhere in the gear.
Yeah.
So it's,
But it pays to buy good gear up front. So I've gone through all the, the entry level stuff like the Thor and the lower end Fox stuff.
Been there.
And
We all have.
We've all been there,
I've
yeah.
put holes in every single piece of that stuff within 3 rides.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I'm a Climb fan as well. I love their XC Light stuff, and I have a pair of their Dakar pants as well, and I've done a full on lean on the header of my 4-stroke, and it just made it shiny.
Yeah.
Like it didn't burn.
It didn't go right through.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
And-
got layers.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's and it holds up.
Yeah.
And their XC Light, it's a lighter material, but even that stuff is holding up fairly good. I mean, it's been a tough year for gear. I mean,
It has.
we've beat the hell out of our stuff, and that's all I wore, that single set of XC Light stuff, and it's still
Stinks.
going. It stinks.
You should try washing it, John, occasionally. Maybe a little Febreze.
It stinks.
Oh no, there's no washing.
There's no washing that. It's probably going to get burnt.
It'll fall apart if
Yeah,
it goes.
yeah,
Actually, I meant to bring it so we could burn it later tonight.
Yeah.
But
yeah. At the party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so, sorry, Laura. go
Just
ahead.
hitting on the last point with Climb, and they've come a long way too, and with introducing more ladies stuff and then introducing more colors. Because 10 years ago, I found it's like you either got brown,
colors
gray,
were
Right.
black, white, but Lee was like dying for like some colors, and I was dying for some colors, and they eventually they've been doing it right. So
Yeah.
we'll see how they evolve with that.
The other thing too is find some women's forums or Facebook groups. I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Dirt Riding Dames.
Oh, you
which
gotta.
is
Do
my Facebook
Do it.
group.
That's what we're here for.
And do gear swaps, and or if you buy something and try it and don't like it, then reach out and try and sell it to somebody else. And Same thing too with and it's not just women. We want to get the families into the sport. And you guys
Yeah.
mentioned in another podcast how you're seeing more and more families riding up here, and it's super important. Not just because obviously I like to see ladies out riding and kids, but as if you're lobbying for trail access, if you're trying to talk to the government to get trail rights or land use agreements, that kind of thing, or even the green plate issue, or if we can show that women and families are riding and not 20-year-old Yahoo guys, and I don't mean to paint that
No,
stereotypical picture.
they've earned it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a reason they've
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny, people talk about that. When I look at, and maybe it's because of my age, but like most of the people that are riding enduro that I ride with and even race with, like there's obviously the younger group of folks, but they're like older people because they can afford the bikes and they can afford the gear and to travel to do stuff. So but if we can have a bigger voice and see more women and kids in the sport, it gives us more power when it comes to lobbying for that kind of stuff.
It certainly
Oh, yeah.
legitimizes the sport to
Yep.
the point where it's hard to speak against it. Like 5-year-olds aren't going to be, boosting wheelies and going,
Yeah.
riding downtown, like it's a
Yep.
family thing now. So it's okay. Well, maybe it's not so hooligan after all.
Yeah, the average
And
person.
and those
Yeah.
kids are taught the right way from the get-go.
Exactly.
Right? That's a big thing.
It is, and what's interesting though this year and last year, I think with COVID, and I think there's such a huge increase in ridership at the moment, and it's different riders because there are people out there now that whether they had the money or they were able to buy bikes, and they aren't all mentored by somebody, and so we've noticed in the last year or two that you are getting a lot of people out on the trails that don't necessarily know the rider etiquette,
yeah.
and it's a challenge. And I know, working with the OFTR that, we try and educate folks and because we want our trails to be around for a really long time. And, and it's so much more fun to go into the trail and ride fast in the trail and, pull your wheelies in the trail than it is to do it in the parking lot. And,
is, yeah.
and there's most of the riding areas and even up here, you have 2-track as well. So you can get the kids out in less intimidating terrain. And I know some of the OFTR trail systems through like Scora, for example, is one of my home clubs. They have some great, Hendry track is great for kids and, and you can get them out there and learn in a much safer environment. But there's a lot of new riders now that don't have that influence or those people telling them what's, the right way to do stuff in the wrong way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I know that's a challenge at the moment.
That's why we try and promote Rally Connex training. Come to us.
Yeah.
We need to teach you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But there's a lot of challenges though, I think for women, and it's not, and for anybody, if you are on your own and you don't have someone that's investing time, to train you or, introduce you to the sport, you have to get the right bike. You have to be able to figure out how to get it to the trail system because very few people are lucky enough like you guys to be able to ride out of your home. And how do you do that? Do you get a trailer? Maybe you have to get a car in order to be able to do that. Do you have one of the racks? Are you getting the full toy hauler experience? It's, it's challenging. And then I know now, and just to bring up an issue that's really relevant now, especially we talked earlier about lower CC bikes and, the issue with insurance and knowing, how do you insure the bikes, for your kids and your family. So it is definitely a struggle, but I think, the more we see these, and I'm going to say they're influencers, and whether they be pro riders or, people that train. And I've done training with Megs Brapp here in Calabogie and, and I watch a lot of those videos online, but there's also discussion. And that's the most important thing. I think there's all these resources out there, for women and new riders. And so reaching out to that community, I think is super important as well.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
almost like it's accessible. Like you can watch YouTube, you can watch Instagram, any of those, and you can learn so much. And you can like message the people,
Yeah.
and they
They
potentially
respond.
Get
They
back.
respond,
Right.
right? And yeah, so I think seeing it, I think the key with this, with women and children and families getting more into it, is to just see it everywhere. At exposure. Back when I was a kid, I would see the rogue, kid going down the trail, and it'd kind of scare me, and that was a bit of a stigma. But as you see it more and more, it just becomes the norm. It doesn't become such a scary thing anymore.
And for ladies, come out to these trail rides. When the Korma ride this year was fabulous, and it was the first time they did it. I think there were 17 or 18 ladies that came out, which for a first time event I thought was awesome. But what was even more amazing and magical was that ladies that met each other at that event within a week or two were hooking up, and they were creating riding groups of their own. And I know, Celine is out there with her group, I think the Brapp sisters, and and these are women that met at this event, and so they create this synergy, which feeds on itself, and and for me, it's
creates
really,
relationships.
It does,
right?
It does, and it's really important. I'm passionate about dirt biking, but I'm also, when I've gone out and I've had, like dirt riding dame rides, like I was astonished. The last dirt riding dame ride I did of the season, I think there were 23 ladies that came out. And this is
Wow.
hey, I'm going out to the Ganaraska or to a Scora trail. And I'm just like, they're not organized rides, but all these women showed up, and a lot of them, they want to learn, and they want to session a log, or they want to work on stuff, and that to me is just, it's amazing.
It is.
They feel safe enough to try that. Or for me, what gets it is, and I know that there were a couple of ladies, and often I'll ride at the back and sweep those groups, and Laura in times past has led the group, which is awesome and super helpful. But when you get someone coming up to an obstacle and you remember how terrifying that was, the first time you had to approach something like that, and that they don't have confidence, but they can do it if they can just get over that initial fear and just do what they've been doing, for most of the ride, and to encourage them to do that. And there are times where we come up to a hill and you've got ladies standing on the hill ready to catch you. And I know at the Cormer ride, I was leading up a hill, and I think I came off twice going up the stupid hill that I've been up a million times before. And I thought, oh my God. But everybody's supportive, and
it's good to challenge yourself too. And that's the one thing on that ride. It was pretty easy terrain, but there were some little scary obstacles for people that might have been not so experienced, and to be able to have them out there, and it's like a team building exercise. Yep. Okay, how are we going to get everybody up this hill? We don't have any men with us. We don't have any muscle pushing us up. We have to figure out how to get ourselves up here. We're going to show you the technique, and then let's see if you don't make it. Okay, here's what we're going to do. So there's the plan, and I think the key is going out for ladies to at least, and for children, families, just to go out, have a fun ride, but find something that's going to challenge you. Like, at least come away from the day and say, I made it up that hill, or I made it over that log, or just something that just is a confidence booster, and it's just going to keep you wanting more and more, and to challenge yourself more and more.
That's a big one.
Right?
That's one thing I love about the sport as well, is that it's the challenge. The challenges. There's always a challenge. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's always going to be something to challenge you. And I get a big kick out of finding those challenges and then trying to overcome those. And having a really supportive group is a big help. And it's good that you guys are doing these women's rides, because it gets women specifically, to a comfortable level where they're not worried about their performance or what they look like in front of another mixed group or whatever, and they can integrate into an event or a ride a lot more easily. So it gets them to that comfort point, that comfort level. Absolutely. And it gets them some good training in a good way, which is, if you're listening, take some notes.
We need to do this. Yeah.
You also need training.
Yeah.
It's definitely, makes a difference when a woman is seeing another woman do something. And it's hard to explain this, because I'm not a guy, but I know for women, it's like, if I see a bunch of guys doing something, there's something in my brain going, probably may not be able to do this. They're guys. It's like they're just at another level, right? But if it's a woman doing something and a woman sees it, it's like, okay, there's a chance I could potentially do this. So it's just that. I think women have a very interesting brain. We talk to ourselves a lot.
Well, our prefrontal cortex is actually fully developed,
right?
So we assess risk a little bit differently than guys
and
do.
That definitely brings us back to another point of what could be a hurdle is our internal.
For sure.
What's their little internal thoughts? So that's something that women there's a variety. Like, there could be some women who have very strong internals and somebody not so much. So dirt biking could be something they try and they never do again, or they try it and it's like they persevere on. They hurt themselves, they get back up. Some people hurt themselves, and that's it. So, it's really just, I think it depends on your personal drive and your genetics and support system.
And as women, we're always, we're so apologetic, and I fall into this trap too, and I still do it, although I try not to. But I read somewhere, and it's not me,
Is it
it's somebody else.
because you're a woman or because you're Canadian?
I'm not Canadian.
You're not Canadian?
Oh, we can talk about that later. No,
Revelations.
I'm not Canadian. Sort of.
Whoa, full breaks here.
You
Whoa.
are now. Yeah.
So we always think, oh, I don't want to hold anybody up. I don't want to slow you down. And we're constantly apologizing. And I try and tell people, and I'm very lucky to have a guy who has ridden, women's novice and women's B and, women's intermediate with me for a very long time. And now finally, I think we're at the point where, he's still waiting for me because he rides way faster than I do. But he's not waiting as long. And so it made my introduction to the sport way easier. But, when I go out, I still catch myself apologizing and sorry to keep you waiting. And I read somewhere, and I forget who wrote it, but they said, don't apologize. The people that you're riding with, if they agree to ride with you, they're signing up for that.
Yeah,
And
for
They
sure.
know what they're getting into.
They know what they're getting into, exactly. And so instead of apologizing when you get to the end of the trail, say thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for waiting for me.
Right. Sure.
And that's all that you need to say. And, so we tend to apologize, and we worry about other people's expectations of us. And
We're always worried about being the last.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about being last is there's only one way to go
Yep.
to get better.
Yep.
And if you don't challenge yourself, if you want to just ride with people that are slower with you, or if you're just riding with a group where you're not pushing yourself, you're not really going to get any better. So, when I first started riding, it was always with guys. It was always with faster riders. And even if it was with women, like Tammy Wilson,
Yeah, no kidding.
Jordan, I would ride with her. She's, amazing, right? So it's really just try not to be intimidated and just feed off it and try and use that as a goal and ride with people who are better than you, and you will become better.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
And don't be scared of it. It absolutely. And like you said, don't apologize. If they've chosen to either help you or to ride with you or to wait for you, that's what it is,
Yep.
and they're happy to do that. So, and don't be scared. Even I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I probably don't want to ride with that guy because I'll be slower than that.
I'm right here, Jason.
It's not you. But you just have to do it. And I don't think I've been on a single ride where somebody said, holy frig, you held us up, or was pissed off that you didn't make that climb. That's part of the journey too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the sport is everybody can be eating shit all day long.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's an amazing day.
Yeah,
Nobody's making that
absolutely.
hill, but it's fun.
Yep.
Yep.
That's part of the journey and that's part of the fun.
Or like you said, we don't know. Not everybody makes it up the hill, but we'll figure out how we're going to get up.
Yeah,
there.
we'll help each other get up there. And I love that bit. And then so when we're scouting trails, we'll find stuff that we're like, ooh, I don't know, is this rideable? And then, we'll session it, and then, maybe we got to help each other up it until we figure out how to get up that section or how to get across that section. But when we help each other get to the top and we're all there, it's like, yeah, we made it.
Yeah.
It's such a
that's
camaraderie.
and that's
like-
universal across both male and female riders, I think, is that camaraderie. And it's probably maybe even a bit more pronounced with the female riders because you guys feel that it's a little more comfortable and a little more, what's the word?
Yeah, no, I think...
Empowering.
Yes.
Empowering.
Empowering. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all the same at the end of the
Like
day
you're on the
when
same
you
wavelength,
accomplish
yeah.
these goals. And it's huge for sure.
Excellent.
Right on. So where do you see this rise in women in enduro going? Like, what do you both see for the future? What are your hopes and dreams?
Personal hopes and dreams?
Well, just,
Or
like,
just
so
for
where do you
women?
see the industry going in
sport?
that direction, and what would you like to see in that respect?
More women, definitely, always good. More women, more children, more families. I think the way of the future is families doing things together, and we're seeing that. I think if that just carries on and gets better and stronger, then I think that's amazing. I just I don't do a lot of the races as much and the events, but I know with Rally Connex, with our events, I would say I would love to see more women coming out to our events. Rally Connex is unique because we don't have just one ride. We have rides for everybody. You come to the Rockhound, you can choose gold, silver, bronze, iron. You can be on your adventure bike. So for women, I just don't want them to be intimidated that there's not events out there for them. So if they can understand that, there's something out there for me, that's going to hopefully bring more women around, bring them to more events. Just get more and more people involved.
What does that look like on Rally Connex side? Do you get many females for Dacre or Rockhound or
So I'd say like Dacre obviously is our crazy unique event, very challenging, very demanding. There are different classes, obviously.
Can you guys get Shelby Turner to do Dacre? That'd be really cool.
That'd be cool. Gold class. I think she'd rock it, actually.
probably
I
would,
think she'd kill it.
She'd kill it. Yeah, we did have some women. Iron class, I believe. And of course, Dacre's open to ATVs and UTVs,
right.
that type of, it's open now. So we did have some ladies riding sort of in the passenger.
co-pilot.
Yeah, definitely I could hopefully see that growing. I think with Rockhound, we're seeing a few more and more each year. Definitely, I would say, I
Yeah,
don't
there
know how
were a
many we
number of
had,
lady
like
riders this year, I
6
think.
maybe, 7 or,
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be nice to have, 20, 30 ladies out to Rally Connex events and stuff. So
And to be clear, like, it's cool to see more and more ladies out at the events, like the actual events. Like,
yes,
I really enjoy that.
I do
Because
too.
it's like amazing, like you're getting into what we've all known for ages. That's it's super awesome, and now
Yeah.
you know it's super awesome.
Well,
and
it's
then we can
cool.
experience it together.
Yeah, and it's cool to see the ladies that are at different levels, and you're like, I know what level I was at that level once, and you can see their journey, and you can see them 3 years from now, and like you said, they're advanced so much more, or they're at a higher level, and it's and you see them approaching you too. You're like, huh. You look back, and they're actually
Better
they're
get
there.
riding, Laura Penwell.
Right? So, I think that is definitely awesome. But yeah, for sure. I just don't want anyone to feel intimidated. There's events out there for everybody in different levels. And I think if they understand that, it'll bring more people out.
It's the same for racing too. Not everybody has a competitive heart, and not everybody wants to put that pressure on themselves. But the cool thing about the races, especially in Ontario, when they happen, obviously our racing program has been curtailed a little bit because of COVID. But what's really cool is even if you're not going out to podium, or it's your first race and you've never been out to one before, with races, you often, first of all, it's a marked trail. Usually it's arrowed, and you get to ride trails on private property very often that you'll never get to ride again.
Yep.
And it's fantastic. Like, for example, I know Laura's heavily involved in the Terra Nova Enduro. And those are phenomenal trails right at the end of the season. And so even if you aren't coming out to try and be competitive, come out and just ride, start at a later minute if it's an enduro, if it's a cross country, it's laps of the course. So it gives you a chance to ride and work on your skills with a little bit of pressure, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And there's novice classes. There's, for kids, there's Pee-wee, Mini A and Mini B, although some of those Mini B riders are smoking fast and holy smokes.
And take it very serious.
Yeah, they do. And they don't mess around, and they don't get out of your way.
Oh, yeah. They're determined.
They're just, no matter how hard you rev or honk your horn, they're just, but women's novice class is a great way. And usually they're shorter races, or fewer kilometers, or fewer special test sections for an enduro. So it's a great way to get involved in that side of the sport. And I will say it's a small community in Ontario. So you get to race with and ride with the same women again and again, and everybody, even in the heat of competition, most everybody is super supportive. The women are fantastic, and you're friends before you get on the course, and you're friends while you're on the course, and you're friends after you get off the course. So it's, if anybody is hesitant to try it, reach out to ladies that have raced before, whether they're amateurs or pros. They're really responsive to questions. Educate yourself a little bit, but then get out there and try it. You won't know until you've tried it. But they're usually pretty family-friendly events.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more on the Ontario scene thing. One of the things I've enjoyed about doing what we're doing is over the course of like the past 3 or 4 years, we've seen like a lot of the same folks for that time period, and watching a lot of them progress as riders has been pretty awesome. Like, there's a good friend of ours, Andrew Esser. When I first met him, he was helping us with our second OVR. He came out, he just lent a hand. And, it's not that he was a bad rider at that time. He was a good rider. Like, he was on par with any of us. But that dude has put so much saddle time in lately.
Yep.
And he's next level now.
And the land training, like he did, it's almost like he drank some potion or something over the
Yeah.
winter of that, after that first season. And I don't know him very well. I just, I've seen his stuff on social media, and seen his results at races, and he worked out, he trained hard. And then you got to ride. And
Well, he rides with people
Yep.
who are absolutely at the top of the game. So he rides with the Yonker guys, and he rides with,
Right.
like, and before Chloe's Kingdom, the first one, me and Mike Spear, local rider in Ottawa, he invited me out to Limerick Forest to ride with Andrew and the Yonkers and some other dudes that they knew. They were training up for the race. So it was like, oh yeah, that'll be good. Like I ride Limerick, I know it. Like it's good, no problem. Man, the pace was bananas, and I was like 95%. I was running that hard. Like I was riding at 95% the whole time, and Andrew was like, he wasn't at the front, but he was ahead of me, and that was like 2 years ago.
Well,
So, and he just keeps riding with those guys, and he's just been getting better and better and
Yeah.
faster and faster.
yeah, and he does a lot of the FMSQ stuff. And I
And
will
that
say,
alone is bananas.
well, and I will say that, we have some awesome female racers in Ontario. The Sharpless girls, and
Yeah, that's right,
sadly,
yeah.
Delaney Brogan hasn't raced in the last year or so. And, a couple of women that have kind of dropped out of the sport. I'd love to see them back, like Jamie Como. But we have some awesome riders. But I have to say the Quebec ladies and the ladies from Alberta and BC are
yes.
next level, because they, in a lot of the time, they can ride longer than we can.
Yeah.
And they're riding terrain that we just don't get here. And so it
Well,
just.
I also feel that there's the culture. I don't know what it is about those provinces, but they embrace that
Yeah.
dirt biking culture a lot more easier than here in Ontario. I find it's almost a battle
it is.
here in Ontario. It's not the friendliest province for dirt biking, if I'm being completely honest. But you go to Alberta or the Quebec, it's bananas. Like everybody rides a dirt bike. It's just kind of, it's like you're
Oh, yeah.
born,
Yeah.
you get it puts in, and then you get your dirt bike.
And there's like 3 women's classes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to our.
Well, and if
Yeah.
you just look at the numbers that they get out to their races, and I'm not saying, like, to a certain degree, we can grow our sport here in Ontario. I think we have a lot of room to improve and grow it, but just because of those logistics and stuff, it isn't going to be at that level here, or we have more challenges to make it that way. It's the same if you go to races in the US, like a smaller club event in the US, you're getting 500-600 riders, and you go to a national enduro and you have 800 plus riders, and it's just like you said, there's the capacity that they have for the sport is different than we have here in Ontario.
For sure. Yeah. So, speaking of events, you've done a number of events, Stephanie.
I have.
Maybe run us through some of your accomplishments, because you've done like some pretty serious ones. I feel like a 24 event down in the States before. Which one was that?
Yeah, there's a great event in July. I am, in fact, at midnight tonight.
Signing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
So I'm hoping in July to be able to get down. They've moved the location. It used to be in another area in New York, and now it's in Odessa this year. But it's Northeast 24-hour challenge. So I've ridden that a couple of times, Iron Woman. But I didn't have a lot of competition. I think the first year I rode it, I was the only woman riding solo.
Wow.
So I didn't make
So
a
you
huge
won.
effort. So I won. Yeah, I showed up. Listen, a win is a win.
Yeah.
I don't care whether
I'll
I'm
take
the
it.
only person. I'll
Yeah.
take it. And then the next year I did it there. I was one of 3 competitors, one of whom was Samantha Bird, who's like a GNCC racer. She's just out of this world. She started, she got the whole shot, and she's competitive with the men. And I think her partner as well won the men's Ironman class.
Okay.
And so if she's racing, I know I will never get the top spot. But she's also a superhuman and personal trainer. And anyway, she's awesome. So, but there was one other woman who sadly was injured as well. So again, I was happy to settle for
Second.
P2. But I had some bike issues that time, and I wasn't really aware at the time that my spark arrestor had clogged. and I had very little compression in my bike. So hills that I had been able to get up in previous years, I'm sitting there just bonking because I can't get my bike up this hill. And we only discovered after the fact that that was the problem. So I have some laps still to do. And so I'd love to do the Northeast 24 again. This past year, I was hoping to ride with the women's US team, but we couldn't get across the border. So but I'd like to do solo one more time and then maybe get a Canadian ladies team, Laura Penwell, to come down with me.
She's been
And,
asking me for several years now.
And she's like, it's too hot. It's too far. But I'd love to go out and give them a run for their money with the women's team at some point. But it's a super fun event. So I'm never going to be the fastest rider ever. I'm old, I'm slow. I'd like to push myself to become better at technical stuff, but I can go for a long time. And so for me, the 24 hours is awesome. So I'm not a huge fan of cross countries because you ride for 2 hours and it takes me an hour to warm up. So, 6 or 7 hours at the Corduroy Enduro, awesome. That's perfect. I like longer rides. So so I've done the Northeast 24 a few times. I've done the Cord 3 times, and it's probably my favorite local race. It's fantastic. This year was made more challenging with the mud, but they also cut a lot of sections. So even though the terrain was challenging, especially if you started on a later number or a later minute, I wasn't done when I came across the finish line. So, it would be nice. I'm hoping next year that we have enough weather to make it fun and challenging, but not so much that they have to cut
Shut
the
things
course.
down.
Yeah, because but that's the Cord. You never know. It's September and end of September. But that's a phenomenal race, and just the work that Blair Sharpless and all the volunteers have put into that to make it the event it is spectacular. And the other thing too about the Cord that I love is that there's a history there, and you feel it. And you feel it when you're riding the trails. You feel it when you talk to people. You feel it when you see Warren Thaxter wandering around, grumpy, and you feel it, and I'm, privy to some of these stories because Ian, has also been involved, in many years, making those trails and helping Blair with the event. But so there's something special about that race. I love all the enduros. They're awesome. I'm hoping that they're all going to happen this year. Sadly, we didn't have a full series last year. I'd like to try. Well, I don't want to try. I've already booked accommodation for the Battle of the Prospectors.
Good for you.
So you know what? After Narden, I figured nothing can be harder than that. So I'm going to Quebec. And I have a whole season to practice. So I think I'd like to try that. I would love to do a GNCC. No, actually, I don't want to do a GNCC. I'd like to do an NEPG. I'd like to go and do a national enduro in the U.S. And maybe we can this year. We'll see. Yep. Just to see what it's like to race with, 30 women in my class or 40 women in my class and, 800 riders on the course. That would be a whole different experience.
Well, since you're into endurance, have you ever given any thought to doing a Daker?
Maybe.
We
don't need to talk about that now, though.
Let's sign her up right now.
Say something about it.
I would like to do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've had a female competitor, or have we? Not that I say we as if I'm part of it, but I'm not. But
well, you did help out this year.
I
Definitely,
did help
both
out,
of you. Yeah.
So I'll put it out there that I will be, because I have a support Sherpa who's agreed to it. I will be tackling silver solo for Daker this year.
Good for you.
It's official.
I'm going to do it. And it's 1 week before the Northeast 24 hour.
I think you could do it.
Great practice. Great practice.
So I'm going to be wrecked.
So we swept silver, right?
No,
we swept bronze.
Bronze.
We swept bronze.
Yeah.
On adventure bikes?
Yeah. Yeah, on big bikes. Yeah.
Nice.
But I think it's doable. I think you can do it.
Yeah. I need to train. So this winter I've got to drop about 30 more pounds and get strong. And I'm working on that. I've got help with a program, which is great. And the biggest thing with that is just mentally riding alone for that period of time. Ian's going to help me just get up to speed a little bit on mechanical stuff. So, I don't have issues. I need to improve my navigation.
So Daker's typically a team event. You guys have solo guys now. You have a solo option now.
Yeah. Yes.
But typically,
there was this year.
Folks will ride in teams.
Just for
I'm gonna
safety.
Go solo.
You're going to go solo?
Yep.
Right on.
I'm going to do it by myself.
Go big or go home.
That's exactly it. I'm 50 years old. I don't have a lot of opportunities. I need to take the most of it.
But you get a support driver, which is awesome.
Yes, I couldn't do it if Ian wasn't willing to be there at the end of the line for me. So I don't know. Like the idea, it's not obviously the length and the time on the bike is intimidating. And I've
how-
ridden a lot of those trails too, right?
So when you're doing those 24-hour event in New York, like how long is a lap?
so you're probably riding. My lap time was maybe 45 minutes.
Okay.
And so and you can come in and pit whenever you like,
Right.
because there wasn't a lot of competition. So this year, if I do the Northeast 24, I want to ride the whole duration, because that's not something I've done. I've stopped and I've been able to, you can take a nap, you can spend time, all of that stuff. So the Dacre will be a whole different experience for me. And I'd like to try and follow it up with the Northeast 24. And it's not for any points, it's just for fun. So
Yeah,
I'm
challenge
glad the
yourself.
timing is such, but I think for the Dacre, it's being alone. I don't like riding alone. I like to ride with other people, so you can talk about your experience and share the experience. So it's psychologically being able to deal with that and pushing through. And 20 hours on a bike, and even talking about it now, I feel like what a sham, because Darren Rideout has just done
Right.
47 hours
Right.
on a bike. Like 20
Everything
is nothing.
pales in
Exactly.
comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think as long as you keep moving, anyway. So I have no idea. I'm going to give
Depends
it a
on
shot.
the weather and everything,
Yeah.
like the heat,
Yeah.
if it's super
Yeah.
hot. Like there's so many
Yeah.
factors too,
But
right?
that appeals to me. To me, that's hard. And I think all of us agree that, I'll speak for myself. I don't know what I can and can't do until I try it. And,
Exactly.
And I don't know where my wall is always. I don't know where that limit is. And so for me, there's something really attractive and appealing to me about trying that stuff. It may not be that the terrain is super hard, but you have to ride in the dark, which if you haven't done that and navigate, it's really challenging. John, you would know that, I think, from your experience at the Dacre, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've attempted the Dacre 3 times,
Yeah.
and your game has to be tight,
Yeah.
not just as a rider, but mechanically.
Yep.
And you have to have a rabbit's foot in your pocket
Yep.
to make it as well. It's like it's a trifecta of things that you need to line up to make it happen, because you could be the best rider in the world, but if you have a mechanical in the middle of nowhere, that's your race.
Yep.
Well, sorry, it's not a race.
Yep.
That's your event.
Yep.
And you're basically done. So yeah, and riding at night is, if you haven't done it, it can be a trip.
Psychologically, for
Yeah.
sure.
It is, and I mean, at the 24-hour, you do ride at night, but so I have to do more practice, because you lose perspective on the terrain in the dark, even with, and I've got like task headlights and they're amazing and all of that stuff, or helmet lights, I should say, but it's that practicing, getting used to, and
shadows.
so night riding and the mechanical stuff is a big deal.
Well, navigation,
Yes.
massive.
Yeah.
I mean, especially at night, because in the daytime, it's pretty obvious where the trail goes
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
of the time.
So it's not GPS guided; it's like arrowed. What you're
The
talking
Dacre?
No, sorry, what you're
No.
talking about, your 24-hour challenge.
You're on a loop and a lap of maybe 10 miles, and the terrain varies. I will say though, because you've got 500 riders on the course at the Northeast 24, one lap, and it's a different race every time you come around,
Yeah.
because it gets super
It
rutted.
changes the terrain all the
It's-
time.
And it's been every year. It rains, and it was the location they had it at before was clay. And last year they got 6 hours in, and the rain was so brutal that you'd be going from single track, crossing a 2-track to more single track, and that 2-track became a river, and they actually had to call the race. So after 6 hours, they pulled the plug. So that hopefully this new location maybe drains a little bit better, because over that 24-hour period, it usually there's a torrential thunderstorm, and and so then to couple that with night riding, and this isn't this isn't a motocross track. It isn't. There's single track, there's gnarly route sections, there's, this weird chicane pinery thing and so you hear bikes coming at you from all different angles. And there's pros that are racing this, and they've got a 6-person team. So they're flying, like they're doing 23-minute laps while I'm, putting along, because I need to go for a long time. So, and we've had a bunch of Canadian riders that you guys know try this event. And, so if anybody's ever interested in trying an endurance event like that, the Northeast 24 is amazing, because it's super fun. The pits are a blast. Everybody's, I in fact talked to, I was supposed to call her today. Damn it. Sorry, Becky. There's, women, you offer each other help in the pit area. Like, it's a really great event. And because it's not part of a series, you're competitive, but it isn't the same competitive level that you're not stressed out about it. You're just out there to have a good time.
That's kind of what I love about the hard enduro scene versus your traditional races, like especially MX. The hard enduro guys, they just they're competitive, but at the end of the day, they're all buddies.
Yeah.
They all ride with each other to train and do whatever. And in the race, yeah, they're competitive and they'll try and beat each other, but they're not punching each other
Right.
in the pit.
Yeah. At the
You
end
know?
of the day, they're
Yeah.
celebrating together.
Yeah, they're celebrating together.
Yeah.
And,
MX is different, right?
MX is a very aggressive sport. It's weird.
Yeah.
And it's not my bag. I know
Yeah.
it's some people love it, and that's
Yeah.
all the power to them. But that's not what we're about.
Yeah.
You know,
The risk factor too, with I
Oh,
find
yeah.
with flying through the air
Yep.
like 40 feet. I mean, you don't land right, and
It hurts.
you could really
people
hurt
think
yourself.
what we like hard endurance crazy. Like, oh my god, you're going up a wall. And it's like, yeah, but you're doing
On the
like
ground.
5 kilometers an hour,
Yeah, first
and you
gears.
jump off
Yeah.
your bike.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll be
It's-
okay.
speed kills, they say.
For me, I don't like doing laps. I like point to point stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like the circles, and it's not a circle, but I don't like going around. And when I get to an MX track, I start riding like a grandma. It's actually no offense to grandmas, but so I did the OCMC 6-hour race this year, and I rode that solo, and it was awesome. It was a combination of single track, and so it's really an interesting experiment because you've got all these younger MX racers, because OCMC is basically a motocross club, and they're flying on the track, and I'm putting along, and I could maybe get an inch off the ground, and I'm taking the corners super slow, and I really am riding like a grandma. And then I get in the woods, and I can go past them in the woods because I'm riding faster in the single track, and then I hit the track, and it's like I come to a stop again.
Yeah.
So
It's like night and day.
yeah, so
Yeah.
That's something I'd like to work on, is a little bit of
That's an
track
interest.
stuff.
It's
just,
interesting you bring that up because we had like a smaller event early on in COVID. It was just kind of an invite, like we're going to be riding the trail. There's vacancies. If you feel like riding, we'll be here type of thing. A lot of the guys who do the fouled plugs racing events, like, the killers that are like podiuming, those like Bush Enduro, Bush Axe Enduro.
Brush axe
Yeah.
and- Yeah.
They came out, all great dudes, really, really good riders. And I was expecting them to wipe the floor with us. Like we wouldn't be able to keep up with them. But it was really interesting. Like kind of on the track that they lay out, like that type of terrain, they're really quick. But when you put them on the point to point and it's a little bit gnarly, it really slowed them down. And I was like, that's really interesting. They weren't as quick as I thought they were going to be. Don't get me wrong. They weren't like bad riders. They were all competent and they could all do it. But they weren't doing it as fast as I thought they would be doing it. And I could see some frustration on some faces. Like there were some dudes who were like, God damn it.
Well, it's the same thing too. Like our enduro bikes are not really set up for a track, and their track bikes are not really set up for an enduro per
Exactly.
se, right? So it's almost like the crossing over. Yeah, it's doable, but
Yep.
it's almost like you're gonna excel better when in the environment
When
that
you're set up.
you're set up for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
We
I
often have guys coming back with their heads down, and they're on MX bikes, and they're fast, and they're really good at
Yeah.
what they do on MX, and they're I can't do it, And then our trails are technical. Don't get me wrong, but these guys
Yeah.
are good riders. They're in the wrong terrain for their bikes. Yeah.
for sure.
And your body too. Like if you're set up to be racing 20-minute motos, and you're on a track, so you're doing laps, you get to learn the terrain, and then like most of we've ridden the cord several times, so even though they have new tests and sometimes you use them in different directions, a lot of the time you can get to practice on the terrain earlier in the season, or you're familiar with the terrain enough that you know what to expect. So when you go to an event and you have the advantage of knowing the track, or you have an advantage of knowing the terrain, you're able to push a little harder. If you go to a race or even a trail ride that you've never been to before on terrain that you're not familiar with, it's a whole nother
All
ballgame.
new. Everything ahead of you is
Yeah.
unknown. Yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a reason why those hard enduro guys go out and walk the course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to know what they're in for. They need to be able to push hard 100% and
Yeah.
then know exactly what they're getting into, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much that helped me at Narden.
Couldn't have hurt. Maybe it set you up for some mental.
Well, that's another touch point that I love about the sport is whether you're into hard enduro, like whatever your dirt biking subgroup is, there's an event for that.
Right.
And then pretty much every level within that event class or whatever. So if you're into MX, you're into traditional type enduros, you're into the more harder stuff, or the point to point versus a hare scramble or a cross country. There's a lot of stuff out there for riders who are interested. And so for new riders, male or female, it would be worth getting to know what's out there. Talk to the folks that are in the industry, that are in the scene.
that comes with like joining up for a club. I
Yes.
think that's your first step, right?
Yeah.
Especially with your primary club, secondary club, whatever it is, and then your OFTR, having access to resources. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously clubs like I belong to Halton Off-Road Riders. We don't actually have trails. So, people join up to our club, and it's a working club, and we put on the Terra Nova and possibly a hare scramble. So then there's clubs like Scora who actually have trails, and they have a mapping system and everything. So, that's really the first step, is really getting involved with the clubs, and then that's where you're going to meet people. And clubs have events, like new rider days.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's so many events out there. It's just a matter of, educating yourself and researching, but the information is there, and the everything is there for you to set you up for success, right?
And now, last year, the OFTR put out their Ride OFTR mapping system. So all of those clubs are any OFTR trails where there's a land use agreement, or those trails are stewarded by OFTR clubs. You have access to that mapping system now
On
with
an
your
app.
membership on an app.
Yeah,
and
right.
and also it's web based, but you also have the mobile
Right.
app as well. So that, I think, has opened up riding areas to new and familiar riders. I know that there's great events like Scora. I hope this year they're planning. We should have the schedules out for OFTR's trail rides in the next very short while.
Yeah.
And also Double O's race schedule too we're working on. But the Midhurst Trail Ride is amazing. It takes you through all of the Scora trails throughout the course of the day. So that's a great way to get to know people and check out these areas. And the races, so Terra Nova, I think, maybe the Beagle Bash and the Cord. Although the races, I know Rally Connex works with the clubs as well to put on a trail ride that runs concurrently. So
Yeah.
if you're hesitant to enter the Cord, or you're fearful,
Yes.
and it's one of the more challenging races on the Double O scorecard, then go to the trail ride, because you get to ride the trails that you would
With no
normally be
pressure.
racing, and there
Yeah.
absolutely no pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used to do it with GPS guided, and we found we were really being encouraged to make it an actual aero trail ride. So the last couple years, it's turned into an aeroed event, so it opens it up to more people. And it used to be, I think, more, you kind of had to have a blue plate, as now you don't. So it's trying to draw in more people that want to be there, want to celebrate everything that goes on with the race, but they don't want to race. They want to enjoy it. Maybe it's their husband who's racing, or their wife that's racing, and they want to come and just do the trail ride. And don't get me wrong, the trail ride's not, especially this year with all the rain, was not a beginner friendly. It's a little more intermediate and above. But yes, it's definitely something, it's really good to be able to offer that along with racing, I find, for people that just don't want to race and just want to do some trail riding.
Yeah, and it's not always easy for people to travel. Like, it took us 3.5 hours to get here today, but
Right.
for me, it's worth every minute or hour on the road to be able to get to that terrain. But
Yeah.
if you haven't ridden Calabogie, do yourself a favor and go do the Calabogie Boogie, or find someone at the BMA club to give you a guided tour. Or, it's like we have some amazing terrain in Ontario, and I think
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
of people, they know Horseshoe, or they know the Ganaraska Forest, and that's kind of where they always ride. And that's great if that suits you. There's no pressure to do anything beyond that. But there are some amazing trails. I know Scora came out with their new trails near Aurelia last season. What is it? It's ass kicker, but Relentless is one of them, and I think it's
Ass
kicker
Kicker?
is the other one, and they're very aptly named. And it's if you haven't ridden them, they're unlike any terrain I've ever been on. They're rocky, but it's like this crazy rock that has chasms, and it'll suck you in, and it's just I've never seen anything like it before. So it's super rocky and technical. The rock will actually, these rock platforms will move as you ride over them. Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty neat.
I have
so
not
it's
tried those
not
yet.
No.
I wouldn't say it's super beginner friendly, although there is 2-track that links it, but it's a pretty interesting ride. So like there's so much variety, and as soon as you go up north, the Shield, the Canadian Shield stuff is out of this world. So anything up around Gooderham and Corduroy territory is fantastic. Here in the Ottawa Valley, you guys have some of the most amazing trails.
Well, I would
and
argue
views.
that like the Gooderham stuff is on the periphery of our territory, if you want to call it that. I mean, when we first started doing the OVR events, it was more like we were getting people out there more. Like, it was less single track oriented, and we were kind of going for distance. And we were getting into the West Lacoon area. We were getting into the Gotteram layer, like Pencil Lake Road area. As we kind of focused more on like, dirt bike specific, I mean, we still have some adventure bike routes that kind of incorporate some of those places, but they're not going to get into the single track in Gotteram or West Lacoon with those bikes. So for the dirt bikes that would ride that stuff, we had to keep it kind of closer to home. But the area in general, like I would say anywhere, like it's huge. Like I did the math one day, and I think it's somewhere between, I think it's like 6,000 square kilometers of, there's legitimate riding trails all throughout that 6,000 kilometer area square. And that encompasses like the lower west end corner is probably the bottom end of where the cord is. And the top eastern corner would probably be up around Pembroke. And you draw a big ski. Obviously, you're not riding in Algonquin Park, but you cut that little bit out. That's a huge riding area, and that's our bread and butter. That little spot, we're smack dab in the middle of that, and it's world class riding in my opinion. Like I've ridden in a lot of places on this planet, and I'm constantly wowed by what we have right here, and it's within striking distance from your major metropolitan centers in both Ontario and Quebec. So Toronto's 3-4 hours away, depending on where you live in the GTA, because it's expanding all the time. And then you have like Ottawa, Montreal on the other side. So that is a huge share of the motorcycle market in this country. I mean, between Ontario and Quebec alone, we have the lion's share of the industry. Like that's where all the bikes are sold.
The cool thing about that terrain is it's obviously outside of, let's say, all the events are all aero, they're all, catered, and you're basically following a track. Whereas that you could go on, explore, for whatever, make a big trip out of it, whatever you want to do. But like with, let's say Rally Connex's GPS guided events, it's like kind of gets you into trail riding with a GPS, but then you can go beyond that. You don't have to just be doing events. You can take the GPS, put on back roads, Ontario. It will have a lot of those trails on there, hopefully. And you can just go exploring. So you don't have to do organized events per se. And you can open yourself up to, Lee and I did this in the beginning. We would just go out and be like, okay, we kind of know where we're going, but we're going to take our GPSs and we're going to keep tracks where we're going. We kind of know roughly where we're going to go. Yeah, we might hit some dead ends, but it's more like the adventure aspect of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be like an event or,
right.
So you can expand on it and increase your sense of adventure.
Well, that's one of the things we ran across a couple times, I think, when we were sweeping for Dacre. Like we would come across families. Most of them were on 4-wheelers and stuff. But some folks were on dirt bikes. There's that one dude. There was just like, he was obviously just like some hipster guy. He's got himself a WR and he's just ripping. And I don't know. He was, he just came flying around the corner. He's just going for a ride. He's got his leather backpack on and his construction boots. But he's out riding and he's obviously exploring and just checking out what's up there. And that's how I started. That's what we used to do. We used to get on our 990s and our KLRs. And we would just go, oh, there's a hydro line that buddy told me about. Let's go check it out and see where it goes.
Yeah. It would be cool if we, and this is something I know the OFTR is working on too, is in the local clubs, working with their restaurants and hotels, and so that like snowmobilers have in the winter, where you have these long routes and you can plan places to stay. And I know there's some like Can Rides, and I think there's a couple of other. Dave Millier, his company, I think, do rides like that where, they're, whether they be adventure bikes or dirt bikes, it would be neat to be able to link these areas together and
destinations, points along the way.
Well, we're kind of working towards that in a loose manner. So we're trying to loop in all the little local like gas stations and restaurants and whatever, like anything that's along the route. We try and kind of push the business their way, right? So if you got 100 riders at your event, it's like, well, hey, why don't we do our lunch stop here? Or why don't, like, if you need gas go here. Feel free to buy drinks and granola bars and Red Bulls and whatever else from these guys.
Bringing into the community influx of money and tourists.
and,
Yep.
and that's if we can keep pushing that forward and show the communities that we're actually an asset and not a burden. That's just going to make things easier in the future.
It's going to make it way easier for advocating dirt biking.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're huge advocates for that. Like we always try and make an effort to talk to the owners and be nice with them and
Yeah, and
them
show
know.
them that we're average people
Yeah.
and we're not
And
just in
responsible
there to
riders, too, right?
responsible.
Yeah.
We're not in there just to rip up trails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost at 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, you're sitting here with ladies. We could probably talk
Oh yeah,
about dirt biking
we could go
all night long.
When is the New Year's?
Okay, let's count down. Yeah.
So is there anything you guys want to mention or talk about before we sign off? Or?
Well, with me, I'm just super, again, happy to be a beta ambassador. Really happy with the brand. I love all the bikes I've ridden and all the bikes I've tried. I love my current bike.
And what are you on right now?
I'm on the 300 RR race edition.
That's a nice bike.
Yes, I love the blue and the red
Yeah,
and the white.
that's good. Yeah.
And so that's my current bike. And I'm just really happy. Just want to thank Beta Canada for being great support, and Langs Off Road, obviously, because they're my dealer. Does everything for me.
They're my dealer.
They're my
It is
dealer.
an addiction, though, right? It's like worse than
is,
crack.
yeah.
Not that I have that
Yeah.
to compare things to, but
Oh.
it is. It's an addiction for sure.
They're just super helpful, like with everything I need. And Rob's just an amazing mechanic, and I feel very. I trust leaving my bike there and saying, "Can you just make it do this?" And
Right.
he knows. He gets it. So I'd love to definitely shout out to them, and thanks again for Climb for supporting Rally Connex. Thanks to Rally Connex and Lee for introducing me to this sport. Thanks for everybody in the community for being amazing, obviously. Thanks to Stephanie for being great. So much fun to work with. You've brought me out to so many different events and brought me to places I never would have gone. And obviously you guys, awesome for having us here and putting on events. And Lee's definitely, we are both grateful for all your help with Rally
worries.
Connex stuff. And I'm just really excited to ride more and get better and keep practicing my techniques and trying to vacation some places, do some more dirt biking out of country.
What's vacation? What is that?
Oh, I know. I literally I don't
Forgot.
remember my last vacation, like, honestly. And thanks, for having us on.
Yeah. Thanks.
What about you, Stephanie?
I think Laura covered it all.
Yeah.
She said that pretty
You'd
well.
you'd also like to thank Beta and
Like to thank Beta.
I would consider a beta if I wasn't on the awesome Gas. But no, I would like to thank Gas Canada for giving me the opportunity this season to rock the Cherry Bomb. And it really is an awesome bike. And if there are any ladies out there that I'm riding with, or if you come out for a ride and you'd like to give it a try, I am more than happy to let you take it for a rip. I am also supported by FXR. So thanks for their awesome
nice.
gear. And their gear is fantastic. It fits
Yeah, they're-
great.
It's come a long way.
yeah.
Yep, it's bright and colorful, and there's very little line between the men and women's colors. There's not a lot of distinction, but I like how it fits. And also for FemPro armor, which is pretty amazing. And if there are any ladies that are interested in looking at that too, I have a demo. They call it the Xena,
Nice.
the chest plate. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to let them borrow it and try it out. But I have had a girl crush on Laura and her riding for a very long time. So
Whoa.
it's I really do enjoy getting out with you, Laura. It's awesome, and always chasing you, never catching you, but always chasing you. through the woods,
I
so.
look behind me and I see you and I go, oh my goodness, she's getting faster and I gotta move. So yeah, I love riding with you too, and Ian and the gang and. Yeah.
So I'm hoping next season is a full one for everybody, and
I
that
hope
we.
so too, yeah.
It's really cool though. We are outdoors. We are socially distanced while we're riding, and
Yep.
I don't think it's really slowed us down a lot from a business perspective. I know it's been challenging for Rally Connex and you guys too to hold events, but I'm pretty excited about the season. It looks like it's going to be a full lineup, and just try some really hard stuff, and I hope to get a little bit better at what I'm doing, and just keep riding. So, and I'm always available if women want to reach out and have any questions. I'm not an
And
expert.
Where would they find you?
They can check me out on Facebook or Instagram at Dirt Riding Dames. The Facebook group is a women's only group, so they just need to ask to join. And on Instagram, it's Dirt Riding Dames. But I love talking about dirt biking, and I love trying to find opportunities and hold more women's events for ladies to get out there. I would love to do a camp out, and I know I've spoken to Allison with Husky over the years, and we'd like to do an event. There's a great event in the U.S. Over and Out, which I've been to before, and I hope we can make it to it this year too. Which is kind of it would be great to have something sort of north of the border and on the East Coast here like that. So. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to hold more ladies events this year. So fingers crossed.
Well, I personally think the world's your oyster when it comes to that right now. It's an open book, and I think you guys are writing the story. I'm pretty excited to see where it's going to go. I think it can go nowhere but up, as far as I'm concerned. There seems to be a lot of interest, and there's some really great people at the helm right now. So,
No better time to be a lady.
No
Dirt
kidding.
riding.
Oh, who would ever want to be a guy? Can you
Oh, I know,
imagine?
right?
Oh my God.
Right here.
Sorry.
Check me. Ian is right into it. Yeah. He likes
Someone's
got to
do
it. Yeah.
No, but thank you both as well for
no worries.
having us out.
Yeah,
It was a
thank
lot
you.
of fun.
Yeah, it
this
was
is great.
fun.
Yeah.
Can't think of a better way
appreciate it.
to celebrate the new year.
Yeah,
than-
Happy New Year's,
Happy New
everybody.
Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year's to everybody.
Excellent.
all right.
Cool. Sign off.
Thank you.
Time
The
for a drink.
champagne.
Yeah.
Right
Thanks,
on.
guys.
Thank you.
I hit a tree with my face. This is what the aftermath of FNL looks like.
Where's the easy button?